My name is Linda Patterson, and on July 8th, 2017, my life changed forever. I was on my way to my grandson Ethan's baptism at Gracewood Community Church, a day I had been looking forward to for months. The morning was peaceful, the sky clear, and my heart was full as I carefully placed the family Bible in the passenger seat, a gift I had prepared with love. I remember checking the time, 9:17 a.m., and thinking I would arrive early enough to help with the final preparations. But in an instant, everything shifted and my world went completely dark. I never saw the car coming. The drunk driver, later reported to have been awake for more than 24 hours, swerved into my lane at full speed. The impact was immediate and violent. I felt my body lurch forward, heard the screeching of metal against metal, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer inside my body. Instead, I was floating above the wreckage, watching everything unfold below me. Paramedics were already on the scene, frantically working to pry open the driver's side door, their voices urgent but distant, as if I was hearing them from underwater. Despite the chaos, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, unlike anything I had ever experienced. There was no pain, no fear, no attachment to the broken body inside the car. My senses were sharper than ever. I could see individual blades of grass swaying in the wind, hear the faintest whispers of the medics communicating, and even feel the warmth of the sun on my spirit, though I had no physical form. That's when I noticed something strange. The Bible I had placed in the passenger seat was now lying on the grass, its pages fluttering, as if unseen hands were flipping through them. Before I could process what was happening, I felt a pull, an undeniable force drawing me toward a radiant, living light that seemed to pulse with love and purpose. As I drifted toward the light, everything around me faded away. The wreckage, the paramedics, even the sounds of sirens blaring in the distance. The light wasn't just bright, it was alive, radiating a warmth that filled every part of me. It wasn't like the harsh glare of the sun or the cold glow of artificial light. Instead, it felt pure, welcoming, and familiar, as if I had known it all along, but had somehow forgotten. I wasn't afraid. In fact, I felt more at home in that moment than I ever had in my entire life. As I moved closer, I became aware of something else. I wasn't alone. A presence stood beside me, though it wasn't just any presence. The moment I turned to look, my heart knew exactly who it was before my mind could even process it. Jesus. He stood there, radiant and powerful, yet approachable and full of love. His eyes held depths beyond human understanding, not just love, but knowledge, as if he saw every part of me and still accepted me completely. He didn't need to speak. Somehow, I understood everything he wanted me to know without words. "It's not your time," was the first thing that settled into my spirit. But then, he showed me something, a vision so clear and terrifying that it shook me to my core. Suddenly, I was no longer in the presence of peace. Instead, I saw a world that looked familiar but felt completely different. The world was under control, but not by God. People moved through their daily lives with empty expressions, compliant, unquestioning, and bound by something invisible yet absolute. I saw technology embedded in them, a mark, a system of control, something that dictated their every move. Those who refused it were cast out, seen as dangerous and rebellious. Families were torn apart, believers were hunted, and the world was told that this was the only way to peace and unity. But I could see the truth. It wasn't peace. It was bondage. Jesus turned to me, and I felt his words in my soul. They must be warned. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The vision unfolded before me with terrifying clarity. People weren't being forced into the system. They were welcoming it. The mark wasn't some brutal, immediate branding. It was introduced as a solution, a way to fix the world's problems. I saw economic collapse, riots in the streets, a world crying out for help. Then came the answer, a new system, one that promised security, stability, and fairness for all. At first, it seemed like a blessing. Governments and world leaders spoke of a new era of unity, where no one would go hungry, where resources were perfectly distributed, and where violence and war would finally come to an end. But beneath it all, something much darker was happening. I watched as people were slowly conditioned to accept the system, step by step, without even realizing what they were walking into. Digital currency replaced physical money, and at first, it was optional until it wasn't. People needed to be verified for safety reasons, so biometric identification became mandatory. Then came the social credit system, where compliance determined access to jobs, travel, and even basic necessities. Those who questioned it were branded as dangerous, extremists, enemies of peace. I saw people I recognized, men and women who had once been strong in their faith, now blindly following the system, convinced it was harmless. Some even believed they were doing the right thing by embracing it. But then, I saw what happened to those who refused. Christians who resisted were cast out, unable to buy food, travel, or even seek medical care. They were shamed, ostracized, and eventually hunted. Families turned against each other, friends reported one another, and churches that had once stood boldly for Christ now preached compliance in the name of love and progress. I saw underground groups of believers hiding, praying, and clinging to their faith as the world turned against them. Then, Jesus showed me something even more heartbreaking. There were people I knew in that world, people I had worshipped with, people who had once professed faith in Christ, now willingly taking the mark because they had not spiritually prepared for what was coming. I wanted to scream, to warn them, but I was powerless. I turned back to Jesus, and his expression was solemn yet full of love. "They must know before it's too late," he said. The vision continued, and what I saw left me shaken. I watched as governments and world leaders unveiled a system that promised security, equality, and peace, but at a terrible cost. It began with small changes, things that seemed harmless at first. Digital identification, biometric scanning, and cashless economies became the new normal, making life more convenient for everyone. People welcomed it with open arms, believing it was for their safety, their progress. But then, the system tightened its grip. Social credit scores determined access to jobs, healthcare, and even basic necessities. Those who questioned this system were silenced. Those who refused to participate were cast out of society, unable to buy, sell, or live without total dependence on others. Then I saw the mark. It wasn't forced onto people, not at first. Instead, it was offered as a solution, a requirement for those who wanted to thrive in this new world. People took it willingly, believing it was nothing more than a tool for convenience, a sign of loyalty to a unified world. But what they didn't see was the spiritual weight behind it. Accepting it wasn't just about technology or security. It was about choosing allegiance. It was a direct rejection of God's authority, an open declaration that one belonged to something else. What broke my heart the most was seeing Christians, people who had spent their lives in faith, taking it without hesitation. They hadn't prepared. They hadn't strengthened their spirits. And because of that, they were deceived. Jesus turned to me again, his eyes filled with sorrow but also urgency. Many will fall, not because they are evil, but because they were not prepared, he conveyed to me. I wanted to look away, to deny what I was seeing, but I couldn't. The deception was so strong, so convincing, that even faithful believers were embracing it. I saw churches divided, pastors justifying the system, saying it was simply the next step in human evolution. Those who resisted were labeled extremists, enemies of progress, threats to society. Families were torn apart, wives turning against husbands, children against parents. But there were still those who remained faithful, small underground communities who refused to bow to the system. They had no money, no homes, no security in the world's eyes, but they had each other, and they had God. And Jesus showed me that those who stood firm, who refused the mark no matter the cost, would be held in his hands. They would suffer, yes, but they would be protected in ways the world could never understand. The vision shifted, and I saw scenes of unimaginable suffering and persecution. Those who refused the mark were hunted down, dragged from their homes, and thrown into camps like criminals. They weren't violent. They weren't rebels. They were simply people who refused to deny Jesus. Governments justified it by calling them threats to peace, obstacles to unity. News reports painted them as fanatics, conspiracy theorists, and enemies of progress. But I could see the truth. These were people who had simply chosen to remain faithful to God, even when the world turned against them. Despite their suffering, something incredible happened. Their faith grew stronger. They encouraged one another, whispering prayers in the darkness, sharing food in secret, holding worship in hidden places. And the presence of God was with them. Even when everything was taken away, when they lost their homes, their families, their very place in society, they were not alone. I saw miracles happen. Food appeared where there was none. Wounds healing that should have been fatal. A supernatural peace resting on them in the midst of the storm. The world saw them as weak, but in reality, they were stronger than anyone. They had something the world couldn't take away, eternal life, a promise that went beyond this temporary world. Then, the vision changed one last time, and I saw something I will never forget. The sky split open, light pouring down, brighter than anything I had ever seen. And then he returned. Jesus, in all his glory, descending with power and authority, surrounded by angels too numerous to count. The world trembled. Those who had mocked him, who had persecuted his people, who had taken the mark and pledged themselves to the system, fell to their knees in terror. They realized the truth, but it was too late. The faithful, the ones who had endured, were lifted up, their suffering turned into joy in an instant. Justice came, swift and final. The system that had enslaved the world crumbled in the presence of the King of Kings. Evil had lost. I gasped as I was suddenly pulled back into my broken body, back into the wreckage on the side of the road. The paramedics were still working on me, unaware of what had just happened. I had been gone for 21 minutes and 37 seconds, but what I had seen felt like a lifetime. From that day forward, I knew my purpose. I had to warn people. I had to share what I had seen, no matter the cost. This world is moving faster than we realize toward what Jesus showed me. The deception is coming. The mark is coming. But so is Christ. The time to prepare is now, not just physically, but spiritually. Strengthen your faith. Know His voice. Stand firm, no matter what comes. If this testimony has spoken to you, share it. Let others know what's coming. And if you haven't given your life to Jesus, do it now. Tomorrow is not promised, and when the time comes, the only thing that will matter is where you stand. Be ready. He is coming soon. That's the end of my testimony, but it's just the beginning of what God is doing. If you're still here, if you're still listening, I believe it's because He is speaking to your heart. This isn't just a story. This is a warning, a call, and an invitation. A warning because the world is changing, and what I saw is already unfolding before our eyes. A call because Jesus is asking you to stand firm, to seek Him, and to prepare your heart so you won't be deceived. And an invitation because no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, His arms are open to you. You don't have to be afraid of what's coming when you know who you belong to. If this testimony has spoken to you, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. I'd love to pray for you. And if you want to hear more testimonies like this, subscribe to this channel. We are in this together, standing in faith, preparing for His return. Stay strong, stay faithful, and never forget, He is coming soon. God bless you all. That's all I have to share for now, but I know this is just the beginning of something greater. If you've made it this far, I truly believe it's because God wanted you to hear this message. Maybe you felt something stirring in your heart, something telling you that this isn't just another video, it's a wake-up call. Don't ignore it. The world is changing faster than ever, and the deception is already creeping in. The question is, will you be ready? Will you recognize the lies when they come? Will you stand strong when your faith is tested? Or will you be caught off guard, unprepared for what's ahead? You have a choice right now today. Choose to seek Jesus. Choose to strengthen your faith. Choose to be among those who remain steadfast, no matter what comes. If this message has spoken to you, don't leave without taking action. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below if you need prayer. I'm here, and so is this community. And if you want to hear more testimonies like this, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. God is moving. The time is short. And Jesus is coming soon. Be ready. God bless you all.